Hello and welcome to this week's Securicy webinar. My name is Russell Radzikowski and I'm the Customer Success Manager at Securicy. In last week's webinar, we covered understanding and best practices on prevention social engineering. This week, we are going to cover how to back up your data and best practices on backups. Why are backups important? For businesses and companies, everything you do these days is recorded, stored, and recalled as data. Losing any of this information can have a great impact on your company. Part of your security policies must cover backup related items. Almost every type of security policy, including access control, physical security, device management, applies directly to data backups. In order to have a successful cybersecurity program, your data needs to be backed up. Today, we will review how to do a simple local backup on both a Windows and a Mac device using built-in software and some general best practices. Following the webinar, we will take a few moments to answer any questions you may have. So let's get started. On today's agenda, we are going to review the types of backups, local and cloud or offsite, how to do a local backup on a Mac with built-in software, how to do a local backup on a Windows 10 device with local software. Then finally, we'll cover some best practices, use two types of backups, backup frequently and regularly, review retention span, encrypt and protect your backups, have redundancy, and monitor backup logs. Local backups. A local backup is a backup where the storage medium is close to you and can be physically accessed. The storage medium is most commonly plugged directly into the computer or is connected over the local area network to the source that is being backed up. Types of storage medium for a local backup include an internal hard drive, an external hard drive like a desktop or portable hard disk, optical drives like CDs, DVDs, Blu-ray discs, solid state drives like USB thumb drives or a flash drive, network attached storage or a NAS, backed up to a shared folder on another computer over the network, or magnetic tape drives. What are some pros and cons of a local backup? Pros first being the only storage limit is the size of the storage medium. There's usually no third-party applications needed. The local backups are directly under your control, usually little to no cost involved, the main cost being the storage medium. Backups are usually faster, depending on how you connect to them. Some cons, there is little to no protection against a localized incident. So theft, fire, flood, or earthquakes or natural disasters can greatly affect local backups. If source data was damaged, local backups will usually be affected as well. Cloud backups. A cloud backup is when the data is backed up to a storage server or facility connected to the source from the internet. Service is provided and managed by a third party. A user will log in with their credentials and using the provided software will create a backup of their data. This backup can be accessed securely from any computer with an internet connection. Some well-known service providers include Amazon, Microsoft Azure, Backblaze, and Carbonite. What are some pros and cons? The pros are it offers great protection from fire, floods, earthquakes, and other natural disasters. You're able to easily connect and access the backup with just an internet connection. Data is replicated across several storage devices, usually serviced by multiple internet connections, so you're not at risk of a single point of failure. When the service is provided by a good commercial data center, service is managed and protection is almost unparalleled. Some cons of cloud backups include usually it's more expensive than a local backup. You have to pay not only for the service or your subscription of that service, but also the storage medium on their service. And it can take sometimes longer to back up and restore as you're at the mercy of your internet connection. Now, let's look at how to do a local backup on an Apple device using their built-in software. Mac OS has a built-in backup tool called Time Machine. Once you plug in a hard drive and set up Time Machine, it will work automatically in the background, continuously saving copies of your files, applications, and system files. If you run out of disk space, Time Machine will automatically erase the oldest version of the files to make way for new ones. It is pretty much a very easy tool to set up and forget about and maintain local backups. First, what you want to do is connect an external hard drive to your Mac. You'll want a drive that's relatively comparable in size to your internal Mac hard drive. Time Machine by default will use up all the space that's available on the drive. Turn on Time Machine and select the backup destination. Once your external drive is plugged in, go to System Preferences, Time Machine, and toggle a switch from off to on. Then click Select Disk and select the volume or the drive that you want to use for Time Machine. Time Machine will ask you if you want to use the disk as your backup destination and will give you the option to encrypt your backups with a password as well. The drive will need to be formatted as a Mac OS X extended drive. If it's not, Time Machine will prompt you to reformat the drive. Remember, if there's any data on this, formatting it will erase that data. There are a few different settings that you can look into as well. Underneath Options button in Time Machine, you can include or exclude certain volumes, or you can get notifications of when old backups are deleted. Time Machine will keep hourly backups for the past 24 hours, daily backups for the past month, and weekly backups for the past previous months. Now let's look at how to do this on a Windows 10 device. File history is the feature that's built into Windows 10 that allows you to make regular scheduled copies and backups of your personal data files on your PC. To set up file history, open the Start menu and click Settings. In the menu that appears, select Update and Security, and then click on Backup. In the right-hand panel, you'll see a section entitled Backup Using File History, and beneath that is an option to add drive. Click the little plus sign next to Add Drive, and you'll see a list of all the external hard drives that are connected to your computer. If you have multiple hard drives connected, you can just click on the one that you want and file history will use that drive. When you return to the backup section, you'll now see that the option has changed from add a drive to automatically back up my files, and that this option has been switched to on. You can turn this option off or whatever you choose. However, it's best to leave it on as it allows future backups to happen automatically and they take place at regular intervals. You can also specify how often file history backups take place and which files and folders are included. By default, file history creates backups of your files once an hour, but if you want, you can start this straight away. All you have to do is click the button marked Backup Now. Some additional features here include the regular backups of your files. You can select the frequency at which they choose to back up. You can also choose which folders and files you would like to select. There is an include and exclude section for your backup schedule. Now let's take a moment and review some general best practices on backups. Use two types of backups when possible. Take advantage of the benefits of both cloud and local storage. Using both forms allows not only for greater redundancy in case of failure of your local copy, but you can pretty much get the best of both worlds and they aren't too expensive. It would cost much more usually if your data was lost. That's why it's always important to have good backups. Your local copy as well doesn't have to be complicated. A very simple USB drive or portable hard drive, these days they're on the market for under $200, can get you several terabytes. So they can be very simple. You can set them up and then use Time Machine or file history just to do a local copy of your machines. Most modern security policies will usually insist on you having two forms of backup, so it's very important that you do have two different ways to back up in case there is failure on one of them. It also allows you to usually restore your data quicker if there was an issue. Having a local backup, you'll be able to recover the data quicker as you aren't sitting there waiting for it to go across an internet connection. Since the drive is right there, you can plug it in and get it at a much higher rate of speed. Backup data frequently and regularly. Prevent loss of your critical data by ensuring that your backups are taken frequently and on a regular schedule. Determining how often your data is backed up can help you create a schedule for how frequently your backups need to take place. Critical data that is updated consistently will need to be backed up more regularly, even hourly in some situations. Depending on the data you have, you should look into a backup schedule. Many organizations will do a daily backup. They will then maintain that daily backup one per week, and then they will have a weekly backup as well, and they will retain that once a month, and so on. Review your retention span. After determining the frequency that you will back up your data, it's also vital that you consider how long you're going to retain that data for. Keeping every backup indefinitely isn't feasible simply due to usually a limited amount of space. Most backup solutions offer a service of a retention schedule, such as keeping hourly and daily backups for a week, weekly backups for a month, and monthly backups, or a few months for even years. This type of schedule allows for having multiple recent backups in the instance a recovery is needed. Good business practices include retaining certain backups, such as monthly or biannual, as long as possible, if not forever. This is pretty much a best practice across almost all industries. Encrypt and protect your backups. It's not enough to simply back up your data to both a local and an offsite or a cloud location. Encrypting that data is very important as well. Backup encryption during storage ensures that your data will be exactly what you expect in the event that you will need to recover it. You can very simply and easily do it on local backups by encrypting the hard drive, and most cloud backup services do offer encryption as well to the data that is stored on. Redundancy. Everyone from businesses to end users have rapidly become increasingly data focused and data driven. Business and companies revolve around the data, and you need to never have a disruption or loss of this data, as it could render your service obsolete, or it could cost you quite a bit of money. Your backups should be redundant. Redundancy focuses more on the ability to provide continuality of service no matter what happens in the terms of data loss. It's done by ensuring your data is stored in multiple separate locations. Cloud backup services providers often have built-in redundancy into their platforms, making it easy to set up with a cloud backup site. Local backups can be a little more challenging. You can create multiple local copies to ensure redundancy, or implement RAID across your backup drives for greater redundancy of that data. Monitor and test your backups. A backup is only worth doing if it can be restored when you need it the most. It is advisable to periodically test your backups by attempting to restore it. Some backup utilities offer a validation option for your backups. This is a very great feature. It's still a good idea to test your backups as well with an actual restore every once in a while. Not only by monitoring your logs, you can kind of stay on top of issues related to space, but if a backup takes place and you try to recover from it and it doesn't work, your backups are no good. If there is an issue, logs or history will display your warning messages, but there is nothing wrong with periodically testing and trying to recover a file from your data backups. Thank you for joining us this week. We'll now review any questions you may have. While we wait for questions to come in, I'd like to say that the next week's webinar will be on the topic of best practices on email security. All right, we have a couple questions here. Is there a particular type of hard drive you recommend? It kind of depends on your data. Almost anything out there on the market now is a great tool. You want to make sure that it fits your needs in terms of hard drive space, and potentially if the data you are writing to it, you will need to recover at any point. Having a higher RPM rate is always great as well. Is there a service you recommend for backups? Again, it depends on your organization and your organization's needs. I'd always recommend going out and evaluating any software before you make a choice. I do know both Carbonate and Backblaze offer great backup services, and the ability to configure your own or set up your own cloud storage. Microsoft Azure and Amazon are both well-known tools as well. It looks like that's it for questions. Thank you very much for joining us today. And again, next week's webinar will be covering the best practices on email security. Thank you very much and have a great day.